Heslop. And tonight they've even got special guests, the renowned broadcaster Satnam Sanghera. As a school last year, we were on one of the episodes where they came and recorded and did a feature on our Gurpurab celebrations at the school. And so we're really proud that we've sort of played a part of that. And tonight is just sort of an extension of that, and this chance to host this event as part of our fundraising towards improving our Wi-Fi in the school.
Good evening and welcome to the Guru Nanak Sikh Academy. It's wonderful to be here, or I should say to be back here, because for avid listeners of the podcast will know we filmed a special episode on the Langar that was held here just last year. It was fantastic. So firstly, sorry, my name's Luke Heslop, and this is James Staples, the co-host of the Migration Menu. And we're here tonight to have a fantastic discussion about food, memory and empire with the brilliant Satnam Sanghera.
Thank you, Luke. Tonight we're joined by a writer whose work has transformed the national conversation about how the British Empire continues to shape our present. Satnam Sanghera, who we're pleased to have here. In his books and in his journalism, Satnam has helped many people think differently about history, how it lives on in our institutions, in Britain, in our politics, in our identities, in fact, as he argues, in our very beings, and of course in what we eat, which is partly what we're going to talk about tonight. So tonight we'll be exploring how food, how memory and empire tangle together, and how these entanglements continue to shape the stories that we tell about who we are. So thank you all for being here, thank you for coming, and please join me and Luke in welcoming Satnam Sanghera to the Migration Menu.
We've got the same socks.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, there's actually an empire connection.
Oh, is there? With
When I bought these, I bought them because they were described as East India orange.
Ah, that's
Yeah.
not why I've got them. Yeah, I got
They're
them
also the
because
colour of, it's the sea colour, isn't it? It's the colour of the castle flag and all of that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And they're the Migration Menu theme song.
Oh really? Yeah, it's that kind of turmeric colour, isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah, where were we? So yeah, great to have you here on the podcast, Satnam. As someone who came to know your work many years ago, you thought it might be 2007, 2008, but through your memoir, The Boy with the Top Knot, which I read and loved, I already have some sense of your growing up in Wolverhampton, in the Midlands. And as someone born in Britain to parents who migrated here from the Punjab, I wondered, what did you eat growing up?
Well, probably not dissimilar to the stuff that people are eating right now. Samosas, a rare treat on birthdays, but you know, sabjis, aubergine, sabji, gobi, saag, parotas on Sunday mornings. That's the thing, isn't it? Absolutely. Mati, yeah, what do you call them? Yeah, that as well. But very Punjabi foods, which I thought were just specific to our heritage, but actually have become slightly synonymous with all Indian food in Britain. Often Indian food at weddings around the world is actually Punjabi food, you know? It's weird how it's translated. And I remember watching an episode with Anthony Bourdain. I don't know if you've ever watched that, his TV series. He's passed now, but he traveled around the world experiencing food from around the world, and he was blown away by going to the Punjab. And he said that he was a meat eater and couldn't imagine ever being a vegetarian except in the Punjab, because the food was bloody delicious.
One of the few places where it's very easy to be a vegetarian.
Yeah, it is. Well, I'd say it's compulsory, almost. But yeah, no, the food is delicious. But of course, when we were growing up as British Asian kids, because the Punjabi food was so available, we fetishized Western food. And we'd combine it with Eastern food in a really bizarre way sometimes. So I remember we'd have lentil dal, yellow dal, with ketchup sometimes. And we'd have gimma on top of mashed potatoes. We would have, actually this was the best one, we used to have cha, hot tea over Weetabix. Tadka beans, which is an international institution. Have you ever tried them?
Yeah, no.
Tadka beans, you've got to try. It's basically curried beans, but they're absolutely delicious. But yeah, I think a lot of British, Asian, second generation kids did that, and you kind of fetishize the thing you didn't have. And I noticed this came up when I was writing Empire Land, in that there's one colony, British Honduras, where the British elite there, the soldiers and the officers, were all importing quite horrible tinned food from Britain because they missed British food. And the locals had access to the most amazing ingredients. But because the elite were eating tinned food, it became desirable and fashionable for them to also desire tinned food, even though they had the fresh version of it all around them. But that's the way it often works. And I was just obsessed as a kid with getting McDonald's, which I only tried at the age of 13, or getting Chinese food or pizzas. And sometimes the temple, they would serve chips. Remember those days? Special days when they served chips. But it was being separated from that at university when I left home that made me realize I was very lucky. And then I suddenly missed Punjabi food badly.
And did your parents eat these anglicised versions?
Yeah, we did. We used to have any English dish, because it was quite rare, we called dinner. Anything. It's dinner. Let's have dinner. And on Fridays, we'd have sausages. On Sundays, we'd have frozen pizzas. And this one terrible thing happened, actually. I've never talked about it because it's so traumatic. But my mum didn't realise hamburgers had beef in them. Thought they were made of ham. So for a while, we ate frozen ham. No one talks about this anymore. It's like it's a hidden memory.
We can cut that.
Yeah. But then my mum became religious and became fully vegetarian. And now doesn't touch meat or make it. So I really actually miss the meat curries that my mum used to make, and she won't teach me either. So.
And now in terms of what you eat at home?
Yeah, it's complicated because I obviously don't live with my mum anymore. The way it works is that I can't really cook because I can cook like Western food, but my mum never taught me to cook Indian food, even though I asked her to, because she thought if I did that, if she taught me, I'd never find a wife. As it happened, I didn't find a wife anyway.
Yeah.
You know, I've only got married this year at the age of 48. So that failed as a strategy. But what happens now, when I go home to mum's, I can't control myself. Whatever food there is, I eat everything. I have an uncontrolled appetite around Punjabi food. So I can't actually have it at home. My mum is always trying to give me stuff. And sometimes she does it without permission. And she sometimes leaves it in my bags, in my car. And there was this awkward moment, because I used to test drive cars as part of my job. So I'd have a different car each time I got home. And once, I got a call from a car I'd handed back. I think it was a Porsche. And it was the head of the PR team saying, "Thanks for returning the car. We've just found 2 curries in the glove box. Are they yours?" And my mum had put them in the glove box, thinking she could secrete them on me, you know. But it's food in the Punjabi culture is a kind of a way of expressing love and anger and everything else.
Yeah. Did you get them back?
No, I didn't. I said, enjoy it. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, how important is food? I mean, obviously you like it, but does it also connect you to a particular kind of identity, would you say?
Yeah, food, I think Sikh Punjabis, more than probably any other culture I've ever come across, everything revolves around food. I mean, it's a big part of the religion. You did your episode on the langar, you know, feeding people has always been part of the religion. And, you know, even as a young kid, my treat on a birthday was to go to the temple and clean the floors of the kitchen and feed homeless people with tea and parotas in the morning. And so it's a big part of the religion, but it's also a massive part of socializing. It's as I've said, it's a way of expressing love, and it's definitely a way of expressing anger. I remember if I was really annoyed with my mum, the way I'd get at her is I wouldn't eat. It would drive her mad. You know, she just couldn't stand it. Even now, when I'm eating a meal, she'll be talking about the next meal while I'm eating that meal. And it's like, it's an untrammeled obsession with food. And I used to wonder where it came from, but when I looked into my family history, and I think it's very common for lots of Sikh Punjabis, I think this obsession with food is partly because food was a bit of a scarcity. And also, a lot of Sikhs are farmers. And my father would talk about, you know, when he was a child, you know, sometimes they wouldn't have enough milk, so they'd have to have powdered milk. they wouldn't have ghee, so they'd have to use mustard oil. So, I mean, they came from a background of deprivation, of sometimes having very large families. My father had 13 siblings, you know, so I think that partly explains the obsession with food.
I think in a previous episode we spoke to the chef Shahini Banerjee, who talked about how famine had shaped not just kind of cooking styles, but also kind of ideas around waste and wastage and wasting food, essentially, as well. I think going in that direction, although the South Asian restaurants are often seen as kind of different from British mainstream cuisine, one of the things that really struck us in Empire Land was how the foods and recipes from the subcontinent have shaped the British diet today.
Yeah.
And I wonder, could you say something about how Empire has shaped what we eat in the UK?
Yeah, I mean, you could. Actually, there's a great book called, I think, Empire of Food by Lisa Collingham. One of my favourite books about the Empire. You could tell the whole story of the British Empire through food. It's not just Indian food, but all food, because the Empire started for all sorts of different reasons. Because we wanted to compete with the Dutch, because we had superior technology, because of all sorts of reasons. But one of the main reasons was food. British food was really bad. I think we can agree that. If you don't agree, it was very boring. And then they discovered spices. And it blew their minds, as it would, if you've never tasted nutmeg before. And so one of my favourite Empire stories is about nutmeg as a spice. I don't know if we use it much in Indian food. Do we use nutmeg? Probably not much, actually. You taste it, I guess, in gingerbread men, pumpkin spice lattes. But that was one of the first spices that the British and the Dutch got obsessed with. And there was only one island in the world, you know the story, one island in the world that produced that nutmeg. It was called Run, R-H-U-N, tiny island, I think about 4 miles long. It was on the opposite side of the world in Indonesia. And you could buy a nutmeg there for, say, I don't know, £1 and sell it here for £600. That's how boring British food was. You know, it blew their minds. And we actually went to war with the Dutch over that tiny island in the Banda Islands. And do you know how the story ends? Do you know?
No, go.
We ended up swapping that island for another island, which was New Amsterdam,
yeah, New Amsterdam,
which became New York City, and that is how the British ended up owning New York City, because their food was so bad, you know. So yeah, and that's just one spice. You could tell like 12 different stories about all the different spices.
And Britain became enamoured with spice so much it became to sort of represent, I guess, a kind of it showed the kind of influence and reach of the British Empire. And I guess one of the really big and probably quite seasonal performances of that kind of nostalgia would have been the Empire pudding. Yeah,
the Empire pudding, if I'm right, was sort of invented in the early 20th century. It was like a marketing exercise, and it was done for the royal family or by the royal family. And the idea was you make Christmas pudding made with all sorts of ingredients from around the British Empire as a celebration of the British Empire. Actually, you don't need to go to that marketing exercise. It's everywhere. It's in curry, which arrived in the 1800s in London, and that's a long time before the Christmas pudding. It's in coronation chicken. You know, it's in the chicken tikka masala. It's in so many things. But also more profoundly, it's in tea, which changed the diet of Britain and India, arguably drove the Industrial Revolution. It's also in sugar, one of the most heartbreaking stories of all. You know, 3 million Africans sent across the Atlantic because of this. Actually, spice. Sugar was known as a spice when it was first discovered by the British, right? They didn't know what it was, so they called it a spice.
I think on that as well, thinking about the work that we do in the podcast and the restaurateurs that we speak to, we often get a very kind of positive and colourful picture of the history of migration and food and the movement of spices, and it's always kind of discussed in the context of a very kind of productive cultural encounter, which is, you know, lovely to hear. But I wonder how important do you think it is that people and know the sort of bleaker histories of empire and food.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, sugar is a very, very dark history. Millions of people arguably killed, raped, murdered, people separated from their children, entire environments destroyed, indigenous people condemned to genocide, entire nations even now suffering from that legacy in the Caribbean. But tea too, I mean, we've all had some of the delicious tea here. It just seems like such a benign thing, a nice cup of tea. Think about the history though, Basically, tea was initially brought to Britain via China. China didn't want anything in return, so what did we do to the Chinese?
Flogged them opium.
We flogged them drugs, and the British Empire was the first massive drug dealer in the world. And think of all the human suffering that came about because of the opium that was consumed. Then the opium wars. We went to war with the Chinese to force them to buy our drugs. It's wild. When you tell people that, they don't quite believe you, but everyone in China knows that because it's taught. Here, we don't really know about it. So there's all those wars. And then when you finally have the establishment of plantations, tea plantations around India and around the British Empire, you've got the environmental destruction. Even now, there are environments, soils, areas of the world that suffer from huge flooding, disasters, environmental disasters, because they've been turned into these massive tea plantations. And then you think about all the workers on the tea plantations. I mean, the enslaved people suffered to an extreme degree, but the indentured labourers on tea plantations suffered, and they continue to suffer. Pretty much, if you're drinking a cup of tea this morning, most of the ingredients will come from the empire. They'll come from Kenya or India, and there'll be a blend. But pretty much all of those workers are being paid badly. Why is your tea so cheap? It's because they're not being paid. So this is a profound and pretty dark legacy.
Yeah, especially the tea. Maitri Jagathasan's book on tea and solidarity is a really great kind of exposition on this as well, in the Sri Lankan context that I'm familiar with, and the damage that it does to the soil as well, kind of monocropping essentially, directly links to some of the kind of the floods and the disaster that we're seeing playing out even today.
Yeah, as soon as you establish a one-crop plantation, the environment, the soil is struggling. And I always think about, in relation to sugar in Barbados, which was one of the first islands that the British really went crazy for sugar plantations on. The soil was so depleted after a couple of 100 years that at one point they set up this plan to import soil from another island. And they started putting on ships, and guess what happened? The soil, the insects in the soil destroyed the ships. So they couldn't do it. But that's how bad it was. Hundreds of years ago, they knew the environmental destruction that they were causing.
The transfer of soil from one land to another has got huge historical kind of continuity as well, from the soils of Afghanistan being taken over to the Punjab as well. Anyway, I've got a slightly lighter question to follow up with. So in a fairly recent column in the Times, you tell us about your quest. This is along with two of your best friends to find the perfect curry, which is kind of a research project, not too dissimilar to the stuff that James and I are doing. So what has your search taught you about British cuisine, and have we got a definitive answer?
Well, no, because that is part of the search. It's got to be eternal. I mean, we're doing it for about 20 years now. Yeah. So we have a curry every month. I do with my two best friends. They're both from Scotland. First thing you realise, obviously, the a curry in Britain is basically a Sri Lankan cooking you what they think an English person thinks Indian food is, right? So as an Indian, it's a very confusing experience. I remember the first time I went to an Indian restaurant. It's quite late. I was a student, and I went because I was feeling homesick, and yet I didn't recognise the food. It was like versions of the stuff I grew up eating, but all of it quite bad and wrong, But the other thing I've learned is that over the last 20 years, in London, we're spoiled. It's got really good. There's actually quite sophisticated restaurants. I think most people in Britain now realise that curry is not one food, that there's hundreds of varieties. There's Sri Lankan food, there's Goan food, there's You know, there's Punjabi food, and there's Mumbai food, and everything else. So I think it's getting more and more sophisticated. But, I mean, my problem with my best friend Lachlan is that he's nostalgic about the food he ate in the 1980s in Glasgow. So he wants to go to those terrible restaurants with flock wallpaper.
I'm feeling Lachlan, to be honest. Yeah.
He orders 10 poppadoms, does a karate chop on them, you know, has the mango chutney, likes to like almost kill himself with the spices, whereas I like a bit more sophistication. I mean, my favourite Indian restaurant is probably Gymkhana, you know, and which is basically cooking the food I ate growing up, but with unconventional ingredients, you know.
What I find sort of on the pod is that obviously people ask you, where's the best place to eat? Where's the best place to eat? And it's always a kind of loaded question, and I'm sort of eyeing up whoever's asking me. Thinking,
yeah, we've got to ask people. Yeah. I do generally. I'd love asking people that.
Yeah.
I can give you my list. I mean, Gymkhana's the best, but it's very expensive. A kind of accessible Indian restaurant I really love is Roti Chai, back of Selfridges. Don't know if you've been there. Very tasty. It's kind of Indian street food. Do not like Dishoom. Overrated. Long queues. Don't understand it. It's hugely popular, and my own family go there. So, what can I do about that?
I can only handle the brunch.
Chikoni's great, and you must interview the chef.
Yes.
She's a Sikh Punjabi chef from East Africa, and so she has that African influence, which is really surprising. It's a bit like the lentil dal with ketchup, but more sophisticated. Like there's all these kind of mashups that you don't expect. But yeah, there's so many amazing Indian restaurants. Of course, and also the ultimate first one, the first posh Indian, the Cinnamon Club, with Vivek Singh as a chef. And he does this crazy thing where if any dish is too popular, after a month he'll take it off. So every time you go, annoyingly for the customers, your favourite thing is never there. But you're forced to order something new.
I think just going back to the flock wallpaper, creamy korma, or the boona, there is something like remarkably kind of commensurate like about that. That if you go in and you try and order like I'll have one meat dish, I'll have one curry, some rice, and my poppadom, you're going to have a fairly like unsatisfying experience. You need to go there with a lot of people, and you have to order loads of things to have a try of lots of different bits. And I like the sort of like authoritarian nature of the old flock wallpaper curry house. That means that you have to just order more than you probably would eat.
What I find with those restaurants is that it's very inconsistent, because someday you'll go one day and it's pretty good, and the next day that particular chef's not there, and then you're eating crap. And so, yeah, it's just the inconsistency that does my head in, and the wallpaper.
Yeah, naturally.
Yeah, I mean, doing this, we have everything is off. I mean, we have what's given to us rather than choosing it from the menu, which is a really great way to eat, I've discovered, rather than actually choosing what we have.
And the noticeable thing is that, I know, whenever I eat Indian food at home, at my mum's, it's just like eating another food. My digestive system is not affected. Whereas if I eat in one of those restaurants, I am unwell.
Right.
And what worries me is that a lot of British people associate going to an Indian restaurant with being unwell.
Yeah.
You know, it's not a great trademark. And I think something's going wrong if afterwards...
They've thrived.
Yeah.
No, I think asking, when people ask, what's your favourite restaurant, what's your list? And then you'll tell them, I like it, immediately I get told, no.
Yeah. But especially, and the one in Southwold is still open, brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah, well now it's a gastropub.
Is it?
So the restaurant, the old restaurant closed in November, just
Really?
after we did a podcast episode from there.
Wow.
But
Maybe you'll close my career down after this.
Well, it's reopened as a gastropub in the new Green Quarter. So it's,
Well, that's the amazing thing. The rise of the Desi pub is an incredible thing, you know? Yeah.
Talk us through it.
Oh, I don't know much about it. My mum won't go because she's religious, alcohol being served. But, it's very cheap dining, isn't it? And it's weird that no one thought about that before, to combine the two most popular things in Britain, a pub with an Indian curry house, But often, I mean, when I was working in America, and they were in Washington, D.C., there was no Indian food. Americans don't really do Indian food. It's a bit generalized, but generally, they're not like us. They prefer Mexican food. But I was desperate for it, and the place you go to is you find where the Indian cab drivers go. So that's the secret. Always, as soon as you find a Punjabi cabbie, say, where do you eat? And they will show, I found this amazing place, which is almost as good as stuff at home.
I had a similar experience in Dubai with Pashtun speaking cab drivers. Who took me to all of the nice spots like that. Okay, so swiftly moving from the light to something a bit more serious. There's a lot of debate about cultural appropriation versus cultural exchange in food. So how can we talk about South Asian food in Britain in a way that acknowledges imperial histories?
Yeah, I feel like the phrase cultural appropriation annoys me because all culture is appropriation. Everything comes from somewhere else. The thing is, you can do cultural appropriation respectfully and well, or you can do it offensively and badly. There's nothing wrong with cultural appropriation. We wouldn't be here otherwise. The Sikhs probably and the Punjabis appropriated their stuff from the Middle East and India and so on. And for me, the whole debate is, you can encapsulate it with the controversy over Starbucks serving chai. And people went mental about it. I want Starbucks serving chai. You've taken our culture. What are you doing? And it's like, hold on. Who gave the Indians tea? The British. And actually not that long ago. In the early 20th century, almost no Indians were drinking tea. It's become a national drink in India because the British wanted to make money out of the Indians. And then the Indians rebelled because they didn't want to take tea the way the British wanted them to take tea. So they started making chai. They started making tea in milk and spices. So you could say, yeah, chai is a kind of a uniquely Indian drink that is a sort of rebellion against imperialism, but also at the same time, it is imperialism.
Yeah.
You know, and Starbucks taking that drink is completely in that tradition. You know, things aren't as owned as profoundly as people think they are sometimes. You know, and you know, tea is not an intrinsically Indian drink. The samosa, I hate to tell you, you know this, comes from the Middle East, comes from, I think, Persia. Spices. The British, when they went to India in the 16th century, would have discovered food that was very similar to the food they were eating, because spices hadn't arrived from Latin America. Potatoes, where did those come from? They're not Indian, they're not even Irish. They came from Peru, right? The Columbian Exchange. And so a lot of nations think their food is theirs, but often isn't. All I'd say is that you've got to do it respectfully. So when, you know, if Jamie Oliver, you know, is making Gimma on Channel 4, and he doesn't acknowledge, you know, where he got the recipe from and the traditions of it, can be offensive. But in general, I think cultural appropriation gets too much emphasis.
Yeah, I have another slightly lighter question again. One of the questions that we ask most of the restaurateurs that we meet is, what do they like to eat, particularly when they're not at work? And we were often surprised at the kinds of answers. KFC came up an astounding number of times, actually.
I think Gordon Ramsay goes to like McDonald's or something.
Yeah, we had McDonald's. Spaghetti bolognese was another really big favourite, and pizza, which reminded us, or when we were thinking about the questions to ask you, that you also once named Pizza Express as your own favourite restaurant.
Yeah, it's a semi-joke that got out of control. I wrote a column about why it was the best restaurant in the world, and it's the best restaurant in the world because the clue's in the name. Pizza, delicious. Express, quick. Always get quick service. Also, whatever disaster you have at your table, children crying, a breakup, a fight, the staff are unfazed. And it's pretty cheap. If you use the coupons correctly, it's pretty cheap. And I just think, and also, because it's so familiar, the menu's so familiar, you don't have to agonize over the menu and go, oh, what am I going to have? You know what your dish is, isn't it? You know what pizza you're going to get. So I just think, in terms of like ease, it's the place I go to. But obviously, if I want a treat, I'll go somewhere else. But I think, chain restaurant. Also, I say this as someone from Wolverhampton, where we don't have a Pizza Express. I know, there's parts of London where if you open a Starbucks or a Pizza Express, there's protests. It's like, don't curse Hampstead High Street with a McDonald's. And it's like, we dream of a Pret. I dream of a Pizza Express in Wolverhampton. So I'm very much pro-chains. You know, some parts of the world dream of this stuff.
when I saw a Franco Manca opening in Lincoln, I thought
Wow.
times have really changed.
I'll go to Lincoln now. Yeah. There is a Starbucks now. For a while, there was no Starbucks in Wolverhampton. It's the only city or town I ever came across without a Starbucks. I just couldn't believe it. Then one opened and it closed again.
Yeah, Dibna Anand, I think, who runs The Brilliant, she was very keen on KFC. That was one of her, or chips as an extra thing.
You can't argue with that. I've just come back from Japan and yeah, they have KFC for Christmas there. Yeah, it's relatable, isn't it?
Yeah. So yeah, these
Chicken has just
things
become
maybe
a
lost
massive
in
rise, isn't it? Even Domino's is now selling chicken, apparently. But yeah, chicken, I never predicted that, but fried chicken, it's taken over the world.
Yeah, the broiler hen as well. Now it's so cheap. But yeah, I won't get into all that
Yeah.
because I've got lots of detail on that. But, okay, that's great. I don't know how we're doing for time, but I think now would be a good time to open up the floor. Yeah, thank you very much.
Yes,
Oh no, it's been nice to chat.
Your answers.
I'm very hungry now. I'm going to go to Brilliant after this, or the KFC. Let's see how we feel. Tell me what your best favourite restaurants are. Always want tips. That's all I want to know about. Brigadier's been there, great. Same company as Gymkhana. Who said that? Oh, I can't see you. I'm blinded. Brigadier's is delicious. It's in the city, isn't it? Yeah, very nice.
I can't see people very well.
Yeah,
It's clearly on this side, but I know we have a question here.
I would say Colonel Saab. It's got this
Oh, yeah.
really
Been there too. So,
fantastic food.
you know, I think I've been to every
Well
Indian restaurant.
spiced.
Very nice.
It's a proper, like, it's an Indian spice. Like, they aren't watered down as Dashundas with their spices
Yeah.
and their chilies, whereas Colonel Saab is very well flavoured and it's decent value for money as well.
Agreed. My niece's graduation dinner, we had it there. Holborn, very nice.
And how long have you been working?
Can anyone name an
in
Indian
marketing?
restaurant? Can anyone name an Indian restaurant that I've not eaten at?
Madhu's you would like. if you
I've
like.
been to Madhu's, yeah. They do catering as well, wedding catering.
Any questions from the other? I can see a hand there.
Yeah, I've got a recommendation and a question. So, Trishna in Marylebone. is very
Lovely.
good.
Next door to Jaconi.
Yeah. No. And also a question which is that you've done stolen history and you've done Journey Through Empire for Kids. I'm a children's writer as well, so I'm interested. Have you thought about doing an Empire Through Food book for children? That would be great.
Yeah, that's a really good idea. You should do that. I wouldn't do it because I guess there's bits of food in those two books already.
Yeah.
And also, one of my favourite books is Empire of Food. Have you read that? By Lisa Collingham.
Oh, that's a great recommendation.
It's so good. You know what? It's not called Empire of Food. It's called The Hungry Empire.
Hungry Empire.
Do a kid's version of that.
I'll look
Yeah,
into that.
yeah.
Okay, and we have a question. Is it Rami there? Yep.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question about your take on Indian food in terms of empire in other British colonies where the Indians were sent to be indentured servants, such as Malaysia, Singapore, and Fiji, or even Guyana.
Yeah.
What's your take on the Indian influences in those parts of the world?
Yeah, that's such a good question. I was actually going to mention that. That's one of the things that surprised me most. And I went to Mauritius and I looked at Guyana quite a lot. But the thing that really surprised me was Jamaica. Because we don't think of Indian indentured labourers in Jamaica, but they went there, and to Trinidad. And guess what? Goat curry. I never made the connection. It's like, why did Jamaicans eat goat curry? It's because the Indians brought it with them. But the other shocking thing was ganja. Ganja, you think, oh, Jamaican, very Jamaican. No, it's actually an Indian word. It's a Hindu word. It was the Indian indentured labourers going to Jamaica who brought marijuana with them. So it's like, and then now, again, it's another example of cultural appropriation, right? It's the Indian, and now it's become intrinsically Jamaican thing, but it's actually Indian, right? But yeah, each one of those colonies you mentioned, they'll have a different version of Indian food, won't they? And are you Malaysian?
No, I grew up in Malaysia, but also to answer your first question, Metsala Kopitiam in Queensway, great work to Shanghai.
Oh, right.
Yes, yeah.
Nice. What's the influence of the British Empire on Malaysian food? Is it the Indian influence mainly?
I think it's mostly because of the Indians and Chinese were brought together. Maybe the Chinese came a little bit before the Indians, but the British definitely brought the Indians over, not just Punjabis, but also Malayalam and Tamil people, and they sort of mixed everything together. dim sum, noodles at the same time. It kind of just makes all the spices together. I think it's why people say Malaysian food is one of the best cuisines in the world, because you've got the beautiful spices of Indian cuisine and you've got the beautiful flavors of Chinese cuisine all together.
It is very delicious, Malaysian food. But also, even I noticed in Japan, where I was recently, Japan is probably one of the most closed off countries in history to any immigration, any influence. And I got there, they were obsessed with curry. The katsu curry, of course, but there's every other restaurant is a curry restaurant. I was so surprised at that, given it's a nation that supposedly resists any foreign influence.
And with Japanese food as well being so good.
Yeah, yeah. Although there's no vegetables. Where are the vegetables?
It's in more, depends on the region. If you're thinking mostly like Tokyo.
Yeah, Tokyo.
Yeah, Kyoto.
You're just going to focus on the meats and the rice and the seafood.
Yeah.
But if you go more outwards, there's more like changunabe and I forgot the name of it's called. There are vegetables.
I'm glad, because I was worried about their bowels. I just thought, because they have good toilets, I just hope they use them, you know? I spend so much money on these toilets.
Any other questions? Oh yeah, one here, and then we'll put Keith.
What's the weirdest Indian fusion food that you've had?
The weirdest, well, I don't want to, fusion food.
Indian fusion.
Oh gosh, yeah, fusion's gone out of fashion, hasn't it, generally? But yeah, I mean, we used to do at Christmas, it's probably our own creation, we used to try to do tandoori turkey. And it doesn't work now. That's something, because turkey has to be cooked for quite a long time, something about marinate, it's not good. It all just burns, basically. So yeah, I wouldn't recommend tandoori turkey, it's why it's not taken off, I think.
Chai on Weetabix seems a good
Chai on
one to try.
Weetabix. Although I can't say I've ever been tempted as an adult.
Yeah, well, I'm never tempted by Weetabix in general. I think it might make it more
We
palatable.
just do unshredded wheat as well, and cornflakes and everything, basically.
Try it on cornflakes, char on cornflakes.
You done that?
I have every day.
Seriously? It still goes on. There should be a recipe book. I think someone should do a Frankenstein Asian fusion recipe book.
It's lovely.
You
Yeah.
have it hot chai.
Yeah,
It has to be hot, yeah,
every morning.
Ah.
yeah. Wow. You look quite healthy, so it can't be that bad.
And you had a question.
Yeah, just wondering about the connection with rotis and wraps. So I came across this story a couple of years ago after I did a DNA test just for the fun of it. My dad's ancestors in the early 1900s went to America. They weren't allowed to buy land or property unless they married a Mexican woman. And I have read some stuff saying that the roti might have translated and become the wrap because they had to take a second wife in Mexico so they could buy land.
There's an entire book on this, on Asian breads. I thought I knew a lot about Asian breads, chapatis, rotis, parotas and all that. And then I went to Amritsar and came across the culture, which I'd never come across before. Yeah. The culture, I know it's really incredibly common, isn't it, there? Why didn't I experience that? Is it not cooked in Britain very much? You don't see it in any Asian temple, Gurdwara? Oh, really? But you never see them cook. And this is the weird way, this is a really important point in that I did a documentary once set in India, and in the middle of it, I met an Indian historian and we had some lassi. And I said to her on camera, oh, I've never had a lassi before. And I got so much abuse from on Twitter, people saying, you're such a Gora, how can you never have lassi? You're so angry, you're a coconut, blah. It went on and on and on. And I went back home, I went to Mum, I was like, why did I never have a lassi? And she went, I don't like lassis. And this is the thing, if you're the child of immigrants, what you experience is restricted to your parents' tastes, you know. So, yeah, well, I've never had a lassi, it's because of my mum. And if I speak Punjabi in a particularly bad way, or say words in a certain way, it's because my mum is my only source of language. And she speaks Punjabi like they did in the 1950s in one particular village. They don't speak like that when you go to India, and they laugh in your face. But I think there's a lot of judgment in the Asian community where people want to oh, you're not proper Sikh, you're not proper Asian, because you haven't done that. But actually, it's because we're second-generation migrants, you know, and we live in a mixed society.
One of the really fascinating things about the kind of food fusions and food adaptations that have taken place in some of the restaurants in this area as well, like exactly the kind of move to gastro and whatever like that. young people taking over the restaurants that their parents set up or the cooking
Yeah,
styles.
making them really quite trendy. And a similar things happened in the Greek community, because all these Greek restaurants were so fashionable in the 70s and 80s. And now they're quite old-fashioned, but a new generation are making them different. And that's what happens with each generation. But I think Indian food has experienced more iterations and more innovation than any other cuisine in Britain, probably. And to such a degree that chicken tikka masala, invented in Glasgow, is now served in pretty much every Indian hotel I'll go to. You know? It's a reverse colonization.
Are there any more questions from anybody in there? Yes.
A couple of points. I disagree with you about English food and breakfast. I still think English breakfast is number one. For me, anyway.
Okay, I'll make exception for English breakfasts are pretty good.
Yeah, you
But
got to give that.
Yeah.
The point you made about change is interesting, about coffee. Second point I want to make was coffee, you said Starbucks. I still think going to an independent coffee shop is miles better. And the risk we run with things like that could easily influence the future of Indian food. So I'm from Southall, I actually work at the Green Filter anyway, so I know very well. And then move after 50 years of being in Southall, transition from a fine dining experience to a gastro, is because the market's changed. And they knew where the market was going, so they've moved because of that and moved with times. But they're still independent, she's still there, their family's still there, the dad's there, I see them every day. But is there a risk, because when you asked the question about people's favourites, there's a few chains now which are owned by subsidiaries of other chains. Are we in danger of that becoming quite normalised and we lose that individual flavour that you started this conversation with? Because chefs are quite hard to come by as it is. There's a shortage of them anyway in this country.
Yeah.
And if the chains sort of come in, even though they look like they're independent but they're not, are we in danger? Luckily in Southall we're not in danger of that, but other parts of the South certainly you can see.
Yeah, and actually there's amazing chai chains, aren't there now? Chai wallas.
Yeah, so they've become chains now as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's always a risk of that, but you know, food is something we all do. I noticed that in relation to books, in that if you ask a Punjabi to buy a book, they're like £5, but yet I'll spend £5 on a coffee like that, or a cup of tea, you know? It's something we do several times a day. It's probably the most intense market there is, because every single person has a strong opinion and a preference. So chains are always going out of business. It's not like we're stuck with them, like Leon's struggling at the moment. I feel like Pret is on the downturn. Domino's is pretty screwed. You know, it feels like, it's a bit like nightclubs. You know, if they're not good enough, people stop going. And so I feel like there's always going to be innovation because it means so much to people, because we live on it and we live for it. Some of us do. You know, food is so important to us.
I think one of the really kind of exciting things about food is this tempting quest for authenticity that allows things to be constantly reinvented and moved away, because even if it's not quote-unquote authentic in some particular rendering, doing something in a particular way locally can also have its own, or as a reinterpretation of a time that you ate in a particular place.
Totally, and actually this is one of the rare instances where actually social media has had a really positive effect. I mean, you see everywhere you go, I mean, I've been to about 4 different countries in the last month. Everywhere you go, there's queues at the most popular, often small places. And it's Instagram, isn't it?
Yeah.
People go on about this particular donor to get from this particular store, or the Borough Market stupid strawberries or whatever, you know what I mean? And that shows you how much desire there is, isn't it? Like food Instagram and TikTok is massive. It's hard to tell because it's your own algorithm, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I'd say it's about 80% of my algorithm is food.
Oh yeah. On the Migration Menu Instagram, which you're all welcome to follow, like, share, etc., etc. Yeah, it's all food. It's very much in that loop. But anyway, on that note, I think if there are no more questions from the audience, we do. Sorry.
Yeah. And another one behind you, I think, as well. Yeah, no, you first.
Yeah, it's okay. So you know, Salam, you know when you look at Indian restaurants, so you spoke about Gymkhana, Brigadiers, Ambassadors, do you think some Indian restaurants are confused with what demographics they're trying to attract? So if you look at Disham, maybe 20 years ago, was probably what Ambassadors of what that kind of very posh Indian restaurant is, but maybe that's dropped a little bit in the rankings. And do you think there's a confusion about what demographics those kind of restaurants are trying to appeal to?
Yeah, I mean, I guess they do intense market research, right? But also there's something so universal about Indian food. I mean, I remember when Gymkhana opened and Charles Curran on the Times described it as the best restaurant he'd ever been to. And you couldn't get a booking for like 2 years. There's something about Indian food that, there's very few people I know who don't like Indian food. There's a few members of the EDL. You see them interviewed occasionally. Did you see that video of that woman being interviewed saying, I've never had foreign food. You know, British food is the best food in the world. She got quite trolled for that. But I would say also this is now British food. You know, and you even saw on that far right march how even they ended up buying, you saw that video of them going to buy some Indian food from a stall. It just tastes really great. And you can't resist it, no matter how racist you are. So I find Dishoom really fascinating, and because queuing for food is something I would never do. It's so popular, and I can't quite make sense of it. I think it might have something to do with the ambience. It looks amazing when you're inside. They've spent so much on it, and maybe that's what it is. And actually, where you are is such an important part of food. And that's the thing I noticed, that when I come to Southall, I'll have 4 cups of chai. It just feels right. I never want chai outside Southall, ever. Never think about it.
At Dishoom, they do bring you chai.
Yeah, when you're queuing for 5 hours in the cold. But it's amazing what they've done. I don't mean to criticise them, but I think they can take the criticism because they're so successful.
And yes.
When you were growing up, was there anything that your mum made that you really didn't like to eat?
Oh God, there's quite a few of those, aren't there? There was curry, you know, the actual curry, you know that? It's what you had when...
Disgusting.
Yeah, it's what you had when you were unwell. Very ginger heavy, and it was like a medicine. But now I think I would quite like that. I didn't like aubergines. What are those lady fingers? What they're called?
They're lovely. They're amazing.
Bindi.
Bindi.
Bindi. And the ones with the spikes on them.
Karelle, they're horrible.
Oh my. What do you call those?
That should be banned.
Bitter gourd. Hated them. Also, when they're cooked, they create a horrible burning smell. But now, love them. Really tasty and so healthy. That's the one thing I didn't realise when you're growing up. This food is so healthy. My mum would grow the spinach in the garden and would turn it into sarg, and we'd moan about it. You know, what was that about? Now, that sarg would be worth, I mean, Jamie Oliver could be selling, Ottolenghi could be selling that for like 30 quid a head, right? And it's just so delicious now. But it's aging, isn't it? And also being deprived of it for 3 years at university really made me appreciate it. You know, I think everyone should be deprived of the thing they love for a while, or it's just home in general. It also teaches you about your parents, isn't it?
One of the lesser known incentives for parents to send their children to university, so they come back and really appreciate the food.
And their parents, and the laundry facilities. Yeah, I think you had another question. Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit of a strange one, but the British have gone through a massive transformation in terms of food and cuisine, right? Because they had an empire. So did the Dutch, right? They had a massive empire as well. But their food is fucking horrible.
Really? The Dutch?
Have you ever seen Dutch lunch on Instagram? Like they put sprinkles on the bread. The Dutch food is horrible.
But the Indonesian stuff they serve in the Netherlands is quite amazing. And you go to Indonesia and you see some Dutch influence in Indonesia, and that kind of, when they actually meet, it's kind of delicious. But it's very different from us, very different.
I was out there for a few years and I was like, the food is just sandwiches and cold bread. It's like, and I come back here, I'm like, you did a good job.
Well, I love those kind of caramel wafers that you put on a hot drink.
Stroopwafel or something like this?
They're Dutch, right?
Yeah.
My father was in the army, and in the army mess, routinely they served curries, and they would serve a coconut, a desiccated coconut with it, and bits of pineapple with it. I mean, did you encounter that when you were doing a book, looking at colonial food? It must be from that time.
Yeah, I mean, often, where it depends where the army was. They have to get local ingredients and often will do local dishes to the English taste. But yeah, I mean, there'd be a long tradition of that. But I mean, in the early days of empire, it went through phases. When the British first went to India, they ate everything. So I mean, they even ate with their hands sometimes. And it was a much more tolerant version of the empire. But when the Victorians came across, suddenly British was best, right? And people were eating, steak and chips, or the 19th century equivalent, in boiling hot Delhi weather, and and it became quite racist. But I think in Britain, we've ended up at a really good compromise now, where I think we are quite adventurous in our food. And I think British food is amazing now. Like in London, there's London and there's Britain. It's two different things, but London is pretty incredible for this diversity of food. I'm not sure how good army food is nowadays. I suspect it's got a lot better.
I mean, there's dried curries.
The Vesta curries, yeah.
They used to come with dried pineapple.
What was that soup? I can't say it.
Oh,
how do you say it? I've never had it. Is it any good? No? No. No one's had it, but Heinz make it, right?
Yeah,
that comes straight from Empire. Yeah, I've been meaning to do it. Question of it.
Yeah, so just I'm from Africa, Kenya originally. So I think our family, they loved the British food, but it always had the spice in it. So like an egg with spice in it, or bacon with chili or a bit of tomato. So I think us being in Africa, we adapted to the African taste, and then the British and then the Indian, but I think we always had spice in everything. So even the African dishes, they're really good, and I really like them. But then I think everything had a bit of spice in it. So
yeah,
living in another country, our culture, we've always liked other things, but put our taste to it. So
yeah, absolutely. I think that's something that Indians have done as they've gone around the world. But there's a difference between spice and seasoning, isn't there?
Yeah.
And I think a British person who is perhaps not uncultured, listening to you, would think, oh, you just like everything hot. You like to burn your face off. Often the spices you're talking about, they don't blow your head off. It's not like a vindaloo, you know what I mean? It's just a bit of heat, but actually a lot of other flavors as well.
Yeah.
And it's actually quite sophisticated, the seasoning that you probably putting into your food in East Africa, and Punjabis are using in their homes. But when that was translated to British restaurants, it was just red chilies, and it turned into like this Olympic sport, into how much chili can you eat. I mean, there was a bit of that in. I remember my granddad would eat whole red chilies, but that's because his taste had gone, And we would have chili eating contests as kids. But that's quite rare. Usually it's quite sophisticated. And also within Indian families, there'll be some of us that actually don't like heat. My mum cannot stand heat, but she likes seasoning, right?
And even the menus, I was thinking they also have them now. It's like a competition. Some of the dishes have one chili picture next to it, and I'll take the one with 5 chilies. That's what even lets you.
The hottest food I've ever had in my life. I'm still suffering because I had it 3 years ago. Lagos, Nigeria. Have you ever had Nigerian food? Oh my God. They think they put Scotch bonnets into their food. Also, they don't label it. You ever had it? I have never felt more unwell. I thought I was going to have to go to hospital. But yeah, wow. Some African food is full on.
Yeah, I think there's a question over there.
Yes.
Yeah, so like you mentioned before about like for example in China, like it's quite normal to like learn about maybe like some of the dark history behind like for example like we were talking about Philippines for example, the trades that are happening. But how important do you think like the history of like the British Empire like is taught in schools here? Like, so for example, I'm a student here, but like of course maybe you can like say there's some like shame in it to what happened, but also like for example learning about it through food is like really interesting and like quite colourful as well. So I was just wondering like how important do you think it is like taught?
Yeah, it's really important because it's embarrassing, because the rest of the world does know about it, because they're the biggest empire in history, right? The Chinese remember what happened, because they call it the century of humiliation. Every kid is taught about it. The Indians know about it. The Australians know about it. You know, Kenyans know about it. And then we go around, we're trying to get new trade deals, and we don't remember what happened the last time we turned up trying to trade. They remember. Yeah. And the more I remember was a very embarrassing bit in Tony Blair's memoir, where he talks about handing back Hong Kong to the Chinese, and he says, oh, I was only dimly aware of the history. I mean, how embarrassing is that? You don't even know why we're giving the colony back? They know. This is like the new superpower. It's embarrassing, even with America, that we don't know why they kicked us out. No one remembers here. They know, they celebrate it, you know.
But, you know, we know a lot about the Second World War and the crop rotation and the agricultural revolution in Britain. So what
I know a lot about Henry VIII. But even those stories have an empire element, and we never talk about it.
Yeah.
We don't talk about, I was never taught at school, I had 2 years in World War II, that the biggest loss of life during World War II on the Allied side, you know what it was? 3 million people died.
Famine.
The Bengal famine. 3 million people died in India. And it's not remembered. Not only in Britain, it's not remembered in India. Because of reasons of shame and, I don't know. But that's just, I find that amazing.
Yeah. We have talked about it on the migration menu.
Oh, have you? Oh, that's good for you. Well, Kavita Puri's made a great documentary series about it, which you should check out.
There's also a, I think it was in the British Medical Journal, there's a piece on, and this is an issue that we've also kind of come up on, we're going to have to wrap up soon, but a piece something we've come up again in this particular borough is high levels of things like diabetes among the South Asian population. And there's in the BMJ they kind of produced this thing to say that there is a link here, a generational link to famine during the colonial era.
Yeah, I'll go into that in an empire world. It's a bit more complicated. You often see social media videos saying, oh, the reason Indians have high rates of diabetes is because of famine and the empire. It's actually not that simple. It's this new area of science called epigenetics. And there have been some links proven between famines and generational problems in some communities around the world. But I'm not convinced by the link between famine and diabetes in Asians. I think it's not been long enough. I spoke to an expert, and that's why he said it's just not been long enough for there to be a link. But there are links in some areas of the world.
Yeah, and on that note, we'll draw things to a close. Well, to a close, there's still, I believe, dal and rice and samosas and tea available.
I'm off to KFC.
I'm hungry.
I'm going to KFC.
Yeah, thank you very much for joining us.
Always, no thanks. Thanks. Fun.
Yeah, we had a great event. It was great to get Satnam Sanghera here and to talk about the connections between food, between empire, to talk about South Asian food in particular, from the food that he grew up with to the food he eats now, to the best restaurants or the best South Asian restaurants in London and beyond. And we had a great atmosphere, I think, in the audience. We had some great questions. So yeah, I think it went really well.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be back at the Guru Nanak Sikh Academy, who've been very gracious hosts for this event, and we're happy that it's been able to, it's a charitable event, so it's great for it to raise some money for some of their projects as well.
Yeah, that's excellent.
Very interesting evening here at the Migration Menu with Satnam Sanghera. Fascinating to learn about his experiences on the connections between food and the whole world, not just the empire, and how things have developed across different nations, and how even Indian food has come back from different backgrounds. So basics, things like the samosa, we all think it's Indian generated, but actually there's a history and a legacy behind that from other countries. So again, food, whilst it brings people together in a positive light, it also has a very, very deep and dark history to some degree, but fascinating to learn about it this evening with lots of great questions about how things are changing, and also the London landscape is moving, and people's expectations of food across the country. So once again, really happy that I came down to the event.
Yeah, it's been a wonderful evening at the Migration Menu podcast and talk. It's quite inspirational learning about the journey and how food has shaped our history and how it has shaped the way our palates and what we eat and what we like. It's been quite knowledge sharing where people have shared their personal experience as well. And I've personally also shared my experience moving from Africa to London, and how the Asian food was still part of our cuisine even whilst in Africa, and coming here, how the British food has also shaped our palates. It's been quite inspirational, and to learn that most people experience similar ways of eating and similar ways of sharing their palates. Yeah, overall it was wonderful. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Puneet Bandal. I'm also an author, but not a best-selling one like Satnam Sanghera. Yeah, it was really interesting to see you know, the empire sort of combined with food and everything. And there's a lot of, I think, dishes and spices and ingredients that we don't think about how they originated from. So I think it's kind of like being a real eye-opener. It was really interesting as well. It was just fun. So thank you so much for putting this on. Really enjoyed it.
Hi, I'm Geeta Raleigh, and I'm also a children's author, and I also write about the empire, but through fiction rather than non-fiction. So it was absolutely fascinating to hear Satnam speak today about the links between colonialism, empire and food, and we also got some great restaurant recommendations, so thank you very much.